Hi guys, welcome back to Giant Talk, the world's first OKR podcast in partnership with Cohen, the dedicated OKR platform. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Ana Becker-Weinberg, Chief of Staff at Unbabel. Unbabel is a language operations platform that eliminates language barriers so that businesses can be successful across cultures and geographies. I'm looking forward to chatting to Ana, but before we dive into today's subject, Ana, please can you briefly introduce yourself to our Giant Talk listeners?
Sure, and thanks for having me, Carly. I'm Ana, and I've been working as a Chief of Staff and a strategic advisor to businesses for over a decade now, first in the professional services space and more recently for tech scale-ups. The type of work that I do is some operational management, but also large-scale strategic initiatives to help companies optimize and grow. And I'm delighted to be talking to you today.
Thank you, Ana. Really looking forward to getting into today's topic. So let's just set the scene and start by asking you, when did you first become involved in OKRs and what's your experience of working with them?
So I first became involved with OKRs when I joined Unbabel over 2 years ago. And Unbabel has used OKRs as a goal-setting process since day one, in particular the Google methodology. Until that point, I knew of the existence of this process and had certainly experienced the pain that it's trying to solve. Teams working in silos and lack of prioritization of resources. But I never really sort of worked with this operational system. And to be honest, now they're so ingrained in the way that we work at Unbabel that I can't even imagine life without them.
I know that you mentioned to me before that when you joined Unbabel and found that they'd already adopted the Google, the OKR method, but they were using spreadsheets to execute OKRs. What was the challenge you found when managing OKRs this way?
I mean, the thing about using a spreadsheet is that it's static, right? So you'll kind of go into it, you'll share your OKRs, maybe even take some time to look at other teams' OKRs, but then you're very unlikely to refer back to it. Certainly that means that you're not monitoring progress, that you're not discussing issues, at least not cross-functionally. You might do so within your teams, but you don't have a sense of how the company is doing. And that I think was the major challenge. It suddenly became OKR suddenly became that process that you were just using kind of once a quarter, rather than something that's ongoing.
Yeah. And how did you go about changing this way of managing OKRs? And obviously, it might have been quite different to how it was already done. So was it a challenge to get people on board?
Oh gosh, yes. As ever, change management is required because it's not easy to get people to change the way they work. And with OKRs, it's so fundamental to the way they work that is definitely something that needs some thinking through. In our case, I think the first thing that we needed to do is find an OKR management tool, a platform that we could use. In our case, we adopted Cohen. And then it was a question of working with Cohen to make sure that the tool really catered to our needs and to the way that we work. And so that was a process that involved not just me, but a group of others. And I think that's key as well. If you want to socialize the changed tool or whatever, the new process that you're using, you want to socialize it within the company. And to be honest, when the benefits of having an OKR management tool were so evident that it wasn't a hard sell. There was a little bit of a hooray, death to the spreadsheet moment across the company because people understood that it was unwieldy. It wasn't something that was sustainable, certainly as we were growing. And so then it was just a question of doing a lot of training, making sure that people knew every functionality and were using the tool in its full breadth and scope. And that's something that is still ongoing. We still have that as part of employee onboarding. I still take some time out every quarter or every 6 months. Now I'm changing it to every 6 months, and hopefully it'll end up being just every year as we progress over time to re-socialize the tool, to remind people of its functionality, to make sure that we're using it. And that's also key, is that now we have not just something that helps us manage OKRs per se, but also helps us understand how we're using OKRs, how often we're engaging with them. And that we have through sort of tool analytics.
Yeah, and it sounds like, it's good that it was a big win, obviously for the team, using Kanban and using that management tool, and it's like you said, it's completely different to using a spreadsheet. It's not static, and there's a lot more you can do, and it's good that you've got the analytics on the back of it as well to see how well people are using the tool. How do you find using OKRs across a global team, especially with teams in different time zones, and teams working remotely in 2020? And I think some of your team are still working remotely. So how do you find that? And has there been any challenges there?
Well, I mean, it's essential is the first thing that I would say about it. We are spread across various different, we call them hubs because not every location has an office, but we're in New York, Pittsburgh, San Francisco, Lisbon, London, and Berlin. So that's 6 locations, plus a couple of other sort of remote workers that have been remote from day one. So in a normal working scenario, it was already essential for us to be able to collaborate cross-functionally because some functions are spread across these various locations. Others, that's not necessarily the case. They're more focused in a particular location. But then when we all went home as a result of COVID, then even with your teammate that you might have been sat next to and constantly talking about work and your progress on your OKRs, that's gone away. And so what OKRs helps us do is, first off, make sure that regardless of where you are in the world, that you're aligned on what the priorities are. And this is both at a high level sort of company OKRs, but also for your function and then your team. But also it allows a communication with your fellow teammates, but also cross-functionally on how you're progressing on OKRs. What are the issues that might arise that you need to bear in mind and, implement or change or adapt, whatever it is that you need to do to your OKRs in consideration of that fact. And so in that sense, it was key. It was really, really helpful for us to be able to manage prioritization and alignment throughout COVID, but also just in general across time zones and geographies.
Yeah, of course. And I think it sounds like having that tool in place definitely been a huge benefit as well for your remote teams. So you've mentioned that since Unbabel has grown and the organisation has become more and more cross-functional, this has affected how you use OKRs. Can you just touch on that a little bit?
Absolutely. So I don't think we're different from most tech scale-ups, to be honest, in this. You'll find that a lot of tech scale-ups, regardless of their functional distribution of across the organization, so you've got your different functions and your different reporting lines. When it comes to actually delivering on whatever work that they need to deliver, they mostly are composed of teams that are cross-functional teams that don't work in those same reporting lines in your org chart. And so in that sense, for us, it was really, really important to be able to have a tool that would allow people to come together cross-functionally and be able to talk about OKRs and align on priorities. And that's where the methodology of OKRs really helps, because you're aligning around a goal, not around your function or your title or your reporting line. You're aligning around essentially what it is that you're trying to achieve. And that's where OKRs really helps. And that's why having a management platform enhances that. And so that's, I think, been our kind of biggest change. The other thing that it allows is not just in the composition of teams, but then how you check on dependent OKRs. So if I know that I need to achieve something within this quarter or the next 2 quarters, whatever your time setting methodology is, in our case, we do it quarterly. Even though that we have that I know that I have that OKR to deliver, perhaps there's a big chunk of what I need to do that's dependent on another team's OKR and something else that somebody else is doing. In order for me to be able to time myself and manage my resources, I need to be fully aware of progress made on that dependent or related OKR. And that's where it's helpful to have something that will show me that, but not just show me that, but allow me to communicate and pitch it and understand what are the issues that are coming up. And so again, when it comes to cross-functional work, having an OKR management tool, but just having OKRs generally is really helpful.
Koan is a purpose-built solution for managing your OKRs, helping your teams achieve their objectives, getting them aligned, and absolutely helping them stay engaged. Sharing spreadsheets simply doesn't scale when you're trying to grow a business. With Koan, you can scale OKRs across your entire company whilst keeping the teams motivated and moving in the right direction. Now, Lawrence, there's lots of things we love about Koan, but tell me one of yours.
So I've got to say, one of my favourite things is that Koan just allows you to have a bit of fun with the OKR process.
Yeah.
In series 2, I think it was episode 3 of this podcast, we actually spent about half an hour, 40 minutes talking about the importance of making OKRs fun for your team.
Yeah.
And Koan allows you to do that perfectly.
Yeah.
You know, even just things like adding a GIF to your reflections adds some real personality. And I think I probably waste far too much time each week looking for the perfect GIF, to be honest. But it allows that fun throughout the organisation, and that's something that's really important if you're going to keep people engaged.
You are known for having the best GIFs
Thank you very much.
in the team, definitely. So if you would like to find out more about how to make OKRs fun whilst using a great system, then pop along to Koan, that's KOAN.co/giants, where you'll find also a great paper that we co-wrote with them on how to build accountability and collaboration using OKRs.
Yeah, especially like you said before when we last chat, for example, the marketing team doesn't just work with those within their teams. They work with R&D and sales, and especially with all working remotely, you can't just go and have that catch up or conversation in the office.
No, absolutely. I mean, I can give you an example. Sorry to interrupt, but I can give you a perfect example. When we launched our key product, which is the Unbabel portal, which is kind of where customers go in and really experience Unbabel. That was a company effort. It wasn't of any one particular team. Yeah. And we knew that we had, October 28th, I think it was, as our launch date. But working back from that, marketing kind of had the last piece of that puzzle that we were trying to put together. Before that, they needed to understand how fast the portal team was being able to build the portal. The portal team relied on R&D efforts to be able to do that on all of the back end. So it was an absolute team effort. And only once that was all done and the portal was launched, then sales could factor that into their OKRs and their targets. And so it really is most of the big things that you're trying to do require cross-functional effort. And that's where OKRs helps.
Yeah, I think that's a really key point to make. It's not that, it's that cross-functionality and not as a hierarchy. And I think that's key for organisations looking to start their OKR journey to understand that process before obviously setting OKRs. I'd like to ask you, you might have more than one, but for a piece of advice that you would give to a company that is looking or wanting to get going on their OKR journey, is there anything that stands out to you as a piece of advice?
Absolutely. I think there's probably two things that I would do. Where possible, start early. It's always trickier to implement OKRs when you already have very set ways of working, and in particular when those various teams have their own ways of working and you're trying to align everyone to kind of a similar approach. So the earlier that you start, I think the easier it'll be. And the other thing is to really take OKRs and adapt it to you, to your operating rhythm, to your priorities, to your choices, whatever they may be. I'll give you an example. We don't use OKRs we don't use individual OKRs because we don't factor in OKRs into performance. Mm-hmm. And it was a choice that we made early on. There's pros and cons that we can go into in a separate podcast about, but we simply don't do it. And so it was important for us to be able to make sure that was something that we would, be able to keep when thinking about an OKR management tool or when thinking about what is the process for setting OKRs. We know that our cascade stops at team level. So how we plan all the way around that. So I think it's important for you to kind of take into account the OKRs themselves, but also the OKR process, how you plan, how you execute, that all of that is adapted to your company needs. And then probably last but not least, it really is an iterative process. You don't just, do it great and then keep doing that for years to come, because it will get stale. Mm-hmm. The same way that you evolve as a company and you grow, you want to make sure that your OKR process grows with you. And so the best way to do that is really to make sure that you have key milestones set in your mind as to when you're going to review how it's working for you, make sure that everyone's still on board, make sure that it still satisfies your needs, both as at a team level, at a functional level, but also at a company level. And if you do that, I think you're going to always be leveraging OKRs to the maximum, which is essentially what you want to do.
Yeah, thank you. I think those are two very good pieces of advice. I think especially adapting OKRs to your organisation. I think you can do some research out there and find OKRs examples and how they've worked for other organisations. But we all know in the OKR space that one size doesn't fit all, and it's all about adapting it for you and for your organisation. So I think that's a really good point to end on. Thank you. Massive thank you for joining Giant Talk today. As always, we'd love to hear from you, our Giant Talk listeners. Please leave us feedback on your preferred podcast platform or email us at growth@babygiants.com. Thanks again, Anna, and we'll see you next time for another episode of Giant Talk.
Thank you.